Okay, so it's clear that this ABC tracking poll is being fudged a little bit. I don't see any reason at all to see it coming down, and it's moving in a specific direction. A very, very clear trend there. There's no logic to it. Like, it's a regression to what? Donald Trump does not have a constituency to regress towards. All the regressions should be moving away from him. But I'll be clear about something. I wouldn't believe a poll at this point that had Trump ahead. I don't care who it is, really. It's not even a question of underestimating the stupidity of Americans. There's just no way to crunch the numbers in that direction. I don't know what they're up to, ratings perhaps, but I simply don't believe that it's getting closer. As long as we're still getting this trickle of polls with Trump in the 30s, I will stick with them and throw the tracking polls in the dung heap of profit-driven lies. I understand I understand that I'm the one that's starting to sound like the conspiracy theorist, but the poll just came down almost 10 points in a couple of days, driven by absolutely nothing at all. In an election that is defined by stability, that simply doesn't make any sense. Okay? Either they're fucking with the numbers for ratings, or they're reweighting by following some kind of groupthink into a tightening race that I see no underlying predictive logic attached to. Again, if the trickling of polls with her way ahead dries up, I'll have to back off, but I don't see that happen. And this is a little bit frustrating to me because the initial result was the first thing I've seen so far that was upholding some aspects of my analysis. I've been waiting for that poll, right? I'm saying the whole time that, white people are moving this way, whereas all of the modeling has them moving the other way. And I was looking for the data that contradicted that, and there it was, but it disappeared as soon as it got there. In the end, we may find out that they're just tweaking to follow the herd and are just making the same errors that they are. I mean, it's not like these other tracking polls just gave Trump a 10-point boost out of the blue, right? If everybody was moving in the same direction, that would be one thing, but that's not what you're seeing. What you're seeing is everybody else holding steady and ABC slowly conforming. Basically, I think they were right the first time. We'll find out. I need to see the trickle of polls with him in the 30s continue to uphold this position. But it's moving from annoying to frustrating. I mean, consider the premise that they got it right to start and they're getting it wrong on purpose to conform to the herd. Math geeks are very focused on truth for the sake of truth, and that premise is very frustrating to us. And I do need to remind you that universities are always more reliable than corporations, but to get to Trump to 45%, you'd have to be getting something like 85% of uneducated white men. It's not an over-exaggeration. Do you think that's plausible? The demographics to get him past 40% are just not there. You can't crunch them. There's nothing to regress to. He has no base of support. The regression is away from him, or should be away from him. A good guess is that 70% of the population is white right now. Half of them are women, so 35% of the population is white men. If he has 30% of white women, which might be a little bit of a low ball, but probably not too much, that's about 11%. Are you telling me he's getting 95+% of white men? Because that's what you need to put him at around 45%. That's a slight exaggeration because I put him at 0% minority support. But you'd still be looking at 85-90% of white men to get him at 45% support. If he gets 70% of white men, regardless of education, he's still only around 36%. And that is with 30% of white women, and there's no minority there, right? You can't make the numbers add up. The polls with him in the 30s make sense. The polls with him in the 40s just don't. I'm sorry. He's losing every demographic by huge margins except one. So how the fuck does he get to 45%? He can't, he doesn't, it's bullshit. You have to be dramatically overweighting white people to pull those kinds of numbers out. Overweighting them with no justification, with no empirical support, with empirical support arguing the opposite. If there is a reverse If there's more white people that vote this election than the last election, that would be a historic shift. It would reverse all the trends that all the demographers are pointing at, and it would shock the people that study this stuff. There's no justification for that. It's nonsense.